Well, my friends, let's say that you need some financial advice when it comes to planning for the future. Where would you go? I think we all know that there are plenty of financial advisors out there to choose from. There's too many, maybe even to pick from. And most banks nowadays have people you can go to and talk to. And they say it's even for free, but maybe not. But they will help you figure out what accounts you need and what you need to do to start planning and saving to meet your future goals. And I think most of us also likely have trusted friends and family members, neighbors, people we know pretty well, people that we trust who are good with money and can give us some advice and some direction. But would you go to the church for financial advice? Now, that seems rather ridiculous, doesn't it? I think society at large in general would never ever consider going to a religious institution for help with financial planning. In fact, they would warn you to stay away from them because most people think most churches today just want to get their greedy, grubby hands on your hard-earned dollars. But even people like us who know better, people who trust our congregations implicitly, for the most part, would not ever consider going to our pastors to discuss how we manage our finances or plan for the future. Now, I'm certainly not encouraging you to do that and set up time with your pastor to go over your finances. In fact, please don't, at least not with me. It's certainly not my area of expertise. But what I am trying to do is make a point. In our day and age, we tend to separate the secular from the religious aspect of our lives. And it simply wasn't that way 2,000 years ago. There really was no division between secular life and religious life. It was just life. That was it. And there was no distinction between secular wisdom and religious wisdom. There was just wisdom. And so people would go to their religious leaders whom they trusted for advice on every aspect in life, including, yes, also their finances. And we see exactly that in a text that we're going to look at here today from Luke chapter 12, verse 13 to 21. And this guy that comes up in this text was in a bind. His brother got the inheritance and he felt that he was being treated unfairly. It wasn't fair in his mind. And so he needed some help. And so he went to Jesus to get help with his finances and to get things on track and to get some help with his situation moving forward. And it might seem strange to us because Jesus was, essentially penniless, wasn't he? He was, for all intents and purposes, I guess you could even say that he was homeless. But that didn't matter to this man because Jesus had wisdom. He had wisdom beyond that of anybody else, and he knew that. And when he spoke, people listened. And he spoke with divine authority that people had, quite frankly, never heard before. I think this man also probably knew that Jesus was fair and balanced, that he was not swayed by the rich and powerful. He stood up for the little guy. And so in his mind, it made total sense to approach Jesus with the situation he was facing. And that's where our text begins, Luke chapter 12, verse 13. Someone in a crowd said to him, that is Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." It was a rather bold request. In fact, it actually was a command. And he must have been hoping that Jesus would say something like this. "Oh, okay, let's go. This is a situation I can straighten out for you. Sounds like this brother of yours is being selfish and petty. I'll go talk to him." Well, that's not exactly the response this man got. For one thing, it's simply not wise to try to order around the Son of God to do whatever it is that you want. But this is what happened, verse 14. Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" It's almost as if he said, "Hey, look, buddy, this is not my job. This is not my problem. This is not even worth my time." He seemed to come across as rather irritated by this demand, or should I say command, that this guy gave him. But it also provided the master teacher with a glorious opportunity to impress upon him, to impress upon the crowds, to impress upon all of us, all the way down through time, an extremely valuable lesson. We see that in verse 15. Then he said to them, Jesus said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possession. And a very interesting, Jesus says here, watch out, be on your guard. Against what? Against snakes, against scorpions, spiders, against wicked men hiding in the corners, against people trying to take advantage of you, against stock market crashes, against economic uncertainty, against your family members trying to take advantage of you. No, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. And this word at its most basic level means a desire to get more. So just think about that for a moment. Are we ever cautious, vigilant, and on guard about different kinds of greed? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I do think we watch our weight. We're vigilant about how much alcohol and sugar and fat and salt that we might consume. We're on guard against the dangers of heart disease and cancer, and we're super safety conscious in our society today. And we buy insurance and maybe generators because floods and natural disasters strike, and we want to be prepared for when unforeseen things happen. But greed? Well, according to Jesus, greed is more dangerous and insidious than crime, natural disasters, accidents, and diseases of all kinds, all put together. And that might be rather shocking to people like us, shocking to people of our modern day. And I think perhaps that man standing there was dumbfounded by what Jesus said and maybe left with his jaw hanging open. Therefore, Jesus goes on to explain himself using a parable that they could understand, so that they could understand what he was talking about. That's verses 16 to 21. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. I'm sure this guy who approached Jesus was not stupid. And I bet you he was able to connect the dots. In fact, I'm guessing Christ made him quite angry and upset because Jesus essentially called him ignorant, unwise, foolish, and a greedy man who cared only about worthless possessions. So how do you think this guy felt about going to Jesus for financial help and advice? Probably thought, oh man, that was a huge mistake. So here's a question. Are you ready to go and approach Jesus for some financial advice? Because a man in our text here would tell you to just run away. Talk to anyone else, someone else. Jesus is going to punch you in the face. Jesus is going to call you a greedy, ignorant fool. And so do you really want to go and talk to him? But here's the thing. He already knows everything already. He knows how you manage all your wealth, all your time, and all your energy. And he knows that you and I essentially say in many ways, hands off, Lord, regarding certain areas of our life, and especially those ones we like to label as secular. That those, Jesus, you can just avoid those parts of my life. I'll take care of that on my own. So would you really want to approach Jesus and discuss your financial situation and your financial planning with him? It is rather scary, I think, but he knows it all already. And he bids us to step into the light and let it be seen. And he does expose the fact, yes, that we've been far too comfortable with our own greed, and greed can show up in many different forms. And one of those forms might even be one of our closest friends. And we've been rich towards ourselves and stingy with other people and stingy toward God. And we have become angry when we are treated unfairly, or what we perceive as to be unfairly by other people, especially those close to us in our lives. And we've also, like the man in our text, really just wanted and chased after the easy and the comfortable life without any issues, without any problems, without having to work hard, just to sit back and enjoy it. And so, we don't want Jesus to punch us in the face and expose the truth about our dark and selfish hearts. But my friends, here's the thing, that's exactly what we need. And we already know how much he loves us, and we already know that he's always there instantly to fully forgive all of our sins. We know that he only wants the best for us, and we know that he wants us to be truly free, to be truly happy, content, and at peace, and he wants us to ultimately be with him up there in heaven for all eternity. And he is the one who warns us that greed, on the other hand, desires to destroy our souls and to drag us away to hell for all eternity. It's far more dangerous than we might think. And so, as painful as it might be, my friends, a trip to Jesus for financial advice is 100% worth it, and it will remind us of things we absolutely need to know. Number one from this text is that greed is woven into every fiber of our being, and it's sinful, and not only that, it's exceptionally dangerous, as Jesus warns us. And Jesus himself knows how destructive greed can be, because he felt the excruciating pain of it driving the nails into his hands and feet. He experienced the consequences of it all so that you and I could be totally and fully cleansed of all different forms of greed and any and every different kind of sin. And so the third point he reminds us here is that everything we have essentially is his anyway. And that fact, I think as Christians, it's very easy to get that into our head. Yes, everything belongs to Jesus and everything belongs to God. But it's extremely tough to let it penetrate truly deep into our hearts and into our lives. And fourthly, I think he just gives us a real eternal perspective on things. Heaven is our greatest treasure, not material things. God decides what to give us and what not to give us. He's in control, not the stock markets or anything else. God entrusts to us what he wants us to manage for him and for his good purposes and for his kingdom. And he even says that we're allowed to enjoy it, but we dare not let it take over in our lives. And God ultimately really does care about how we manage the things that he has placed into our hands. So we can't see as Christians, spiritual things, but we can see the results of them. We can't see into the hearts of other people and how God is working in their lives, but we can see evidence and fruit that time with Jesus does produce in the lives of people who have had the courage to go to Jesus for financial direction, wisdom, and advice in their lives. We see what that looks like. Like Solomon, for example, there are people who understand that all the riches on the planet are essentially meaningless and provide us with no real happiness, peace, or security. These people also, who have taken advice from Christ, might still be very careful to manage every penny, not wasting money on frivolous things, but they are very generous with God and give to support his gospel ministry and a good percentage off the top, not off the bottom. And these are also people that we see understand that life is so much more than things. They see life as being filled with glorious opportunities to be rich toward God and kind toward others who truly need our love and support, and they want to help. But they also want to help in a wise manner that actually truly helps and doesn't enable or hurts other people who might be in need. And there are also people who are, quite frankly, ready to go at any moment to leave this world behind and to be with God through Jesus alone, who opens the door to paradise and who gives us certainty that heaven is indeed our eternal dwelling place. So yes, my friends, go to Jesus for financial advice. In fact, go to him with any issues or problems you might ever have to face in life. And no, it won't always be easy, But in the long run, you will not regret it. And you will find yourself set free, as Jesus promised, from all the things that seek to enslave you, and you will enjoy the full and truly rich life that Jesus truly wants all of his people to have on this side of glory and also off into eternity. Amen.